what is being actually discussed is actually discussed. And what is being actually discussed is a way to limit the number of people who vote, especially when you look at who is affected by this. It's young people, it's college students, it's minorities.
What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the Before You Speak podcast. I am your host, Derek Peterson, just processing the fire hose of my news feed with this guy over here.
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Elwyn, and I don't know if the fire hose of my newsfeed is supposed to have like a regulator valve or a pressure relief valve or anything like that. It doesn't right now, and it's fucking overflowing with just shit. I'm looking at my phone during the day, and I get the feeling like these guys know that they're going out, that they're going down, and they've got 7, 8 months to do as much shit, to do as much harm as they possibly can. So it is all gas, no brakes on the worst and dumbest shit ever. That's how my
Yeah.
fire hose feels right now.
Yeah, I feel like our country's just in collective adrenal fatigue at the moment. It's brutal, man. Well, let's jump right into the news of the day. Where do you want to start with today? You want to jump in on you wanted to talk a little bit about the New Jersey special election, correct?
Yep, yeah. So there was a New Jersey special election last week for the vacancy created by Mikey Sherrill winning the governor's seat. So it's in northern Jersey, and it's a pretty strong Democratic area. It's also a pretty wealthy area. There's a lot of sort of Wall Street and especially pharmaceutical executives there. So it's not a progressive bastion by any stretch. So there were a couple of Democrats running. One of them is this guy, Tom Malinowski, who is been in Congress before. He's kind of a normie centrist Dem. Nothing remarkable about him, totes the party line, isn't going to go out on any ledges really. And he was running against this woman, Ana Lucia Mejia, I believe is her name. And he was pretty much favored to win. People weren't paying a ton of attention to this until AIPAC, that's AIPAC, the American Israeli lobbying group, jumped in through a PAC that they set up so that their name wouldn't be on it, and dumped a whole slew of money against Malinowski. And the reason that they did that was because Malinowski, like most Democrats, have kind of read his base and said, like, maybe we don't need to send every single weapon over to Israel that they ask for. Maybe we should slow this roll a little bit on just unlimited funding anytime they ask for it. And that's a hard line for AIPAC. You are either all in or you are all out. There is no nuance to them at all. So he said that, and they said, "Wait, we're going to go against him, and we're going to go against him hard." Uh, and the reason that they went against him was not the Israeli arms statement that he had made. It was that he had voted to fund ICE in, I think, 2019. Notable in part because fucking everybody's voted to fund ICE before now.
Yeah, nobody expected ICE to be this. So
Right. Yeah,
prior to 2025, funding ICE was basically funding Border Patrol. Like, like it wasn't this agency that was, tearing down, doors to get into U.S. citizens' houses without warrants and shooting people in the street,
Yeah, supporting ICE is kind of an easy one.
Yeah.
You do it. It's to support a strong border, and if you're far enough left, like maybe AOC, maybe she didn't vote to support ICE, to fund ICE a couple times, then it's an easy one too because it's smack in the middle of your ideology and your platform. So that's what they went in on Malinowski on. But everybody knows who it was that was paying for the ads and why. And it wound up that Malinowski, they have early voting. Malinowski was in the lead by a decent chunk until these ads started to hit in like the last 10 days, 2 weeks of the election, and he lost. The election day vote went huge to Mejia, who is a far left, anti-Israel, anti-Zionist progressive candidate who is openly and proudly saying that Israel has committed a genocide. So AIPAC, because they're mad at this guy not being 100% in, went in against him, and they found an issue that is so powerful in the Democratic electorate right now that Malinowski, he only conceded yesterday because it was low turnout, low votes. It was like less than 1,000 votes difference, but he did concede. And in his concession statement, he said, in the last week, everybody was coming up to me and saying, "Man, I can't believe you support ICE. I can't believe you support ICE," which is a direct result of these ads. So the whole thing is really
Mm.
interesting in a couple of ways to me. One, you have AIPAC, this incredibly powerful lobby that the Democrats in Congress and the Democratic base are like, have developed an incredible allergy to, and AIPAC doesn't seem to get it. That's what's going on. So you have
Yeah.
them jumping in, trying to swing an election to a candidate that they think is going to be more favorable to them, unwittingly tapping on a hot button issue that's a way hotter of a button than anybody thought, where a normie Dem like Malinowski is going to lose, and in so doing, getting elected a far left anti-Zionist candidate. It's an incredible own goal by AIPAC, and every Democrat has to be looking at this going, "Oh my God, I don't know what this means, but I voted to fund ICE 5 years ago, and I better not fucking touch AIPAC, and I better be ready for them to come after me, because I don't know what they're doing." And AIPAC should be looking at this going like, "Fuck, what are we supposed to do? Like, we can't get our people elected."
Yeah, and clearly defending your position at this point, meaning like people are going to need to start getting out ahead of this in before the midterms. Like if you are running for reelection and you have any history of voting for ICE, and you're a Democrat, you're going to need to start talking about it now. Like, hey, yeah, we voted on this before ICE. What it was what it was now. And so I have a history of this, but I don't support what's happening now, that type of stuff. So that'll be interesting to see how that's handled in these upcoming elections. Yeah, talk about a foot in your mouth moment.
Yeah, and
Come
and I
on, come
think,
on, APAC.
yeah, and the upside is kind of what you just discussed. If you're a Democrat incumbent, you can't be blindsided by this. You can't be
No.
blindsided by the ICE attack ads. You now see, oh shit, they're gonna work, and I have time to get ahead of it, so I can get ahead of it through TV hits, or through votes, or through just explaining my shit early and often. But no, it's the Democratic base, I think, is just furious at what's going on, and absolutely furious at the complicity of Democratic Congress people for the last, certainly, year, and
Yeah.
last 10 years. As soon as Trump came on, it is boiling over.
Yeah. I mean, it's boiling over for everybody for a number of reasons. I wanted to touch base real quick on, I think the Epstein files is all over the news right now. It's almost everything in my news feed, partially because we just saw Pam Bondi, testify before Congress. And in this, obviously she's not answering any questions, uh, trying to turn everything around on whoever's asking the questions. But there was one thing that tied into some previous conversations that we had that I wanted to just address here, because this is the only leg that this administration currently has to stand on, and that's the stock market. So as Pam Bonnie's being asked about Epstein questions, being asked about, why they were specifically not supposed to. There was an email from the lawyers for the survivors that said, "Hey, please redact these specific names." They included that email in the files that they released with unredacted names, except for one. They went in and crossed out one. And so as Pam Bondi's being asked about all of this stuff, she quickly turns and says, we should be focused on the stock market. The stock market is at its highest levels ever. The Dow Jones is crushing it right now. Why are we not talking about this? It blows my mind. A, if that works on anybody, God bless you. You have the IQ of a turtle. But B, this is the thing that I have been hounding on for weeks, and then like this was the resist and unsubscribe movement that Scott Galloway talked about that got me fired up, and this is the very issue that at some point we need to unite around. Like economically, the one of the biggest things you can do in a democracy to protest is to not participate in the economy. And so two things need to happen. One, we need to be unsubscribing and, getting rid of subscriptions from companies that do not support the values that we claim to have. And then two, we need to be resubscribing and subscribing to companies that do. Like, and these should be, we need to be more vocal about this. Like, our money should follow our values. And I've been on this train for a while now. And I think doing a little bit more digging on it today and being more vocal about it. But like, this is the thing. This is the last thing that they really can sit and say, because everything else they're underwater on. The economy is not great. Jobs are not great. We're going into wars with other countries that are not warranted at all, threatening, Europe, Venezuela. We stole 200 million and put it in a, Middle Eastern bank account. The Epstein files, ICE, like all of this stuff is not good. There's not an issue that right now I would say Republicans are winning on, except the stock market. And so when this leg finally gets kicked out from underneath them, I it makes me feel like the wall finally crumbles, and she basically you know lo- lobbed the ball up for everybody today in admittance, like, hey, like, we have one thing left to try to like distract you guys from what's going on, and that's the stock market. And ironically enough, the stock market is doing well for two reasons, but one major reason, it's the weakened dollar. The reason the stock market's at its highest ever is because the dollar is weak. And there is a lot of information out there right now that the reason the dollar is weak is because Trump is doing it intentionally. And he has hedged his bets with a crypto stablecoin that works against the US dollar. So this whole crypto thing and everything that's going on, like, it's insane to me. But when you start to tap into this world, the corruption is at a level that is just unbelievable. And the fact that one man can move the world economy like he does, like, this power needs to be stripped from him as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think I if they want to hang their hat on the stock market, fucking go for it. Because you know who had the previous best stock market? Joe Biden. We don't, over 50% of the population does not own any stocks, does not have any retirement fund, is not in ETFs or in mutual funds. It's just not something that most people give a shit about, right? If you're under 30 and you own stocks, you are in the incredible minority
Mhm.
of your demographic, right? So like the Galloway point is about, like, yes, they listen to money, but if they're sitting there, I do think that we're at the point, especially with Epstein, where this administration has such little credibility because every single thing they do is so obviously half-assed and a cover-up, that for her to get up and be like, well, our stock market is great. Everyone's gonna be like, fucking great, man. There's 15 survivors right behind you. Guess I just found 15 people who don't care about the stock market. Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Uh, so to me, I think and it's not good. We should be more invested in the stock market. It shouldn't be over 50% are not, because that means that the income inequality gap in this country is only spreading and getting worse and worse and worse. So the more they talk about the stock market, I think the more people are just like, the people who care are most of their base, most of their like moneyed base anyway, right? And the corruption in it all is also so naked that, there are just signs for optimism for me. And like, I do think people really see what a steaming pile of lying horseshit this entire second term has been. And it's why you see his support in like white non-college voters, I believe, is underwater for the first time. In the young vote, it's cratered by like 30 points since he was elected. I think you just have enough people out there seeing like, no, 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 no. This guy, this is full of shit. This is bullshit. This is not helping me. This is
Yeah.
corrupt. And everything they're throwing at me is clearly a diversion from things I care about, which are actually seem to be Epstein, which is good. People should care about it. And the fact that that structural inequality in the economy is bad and getting worse.
Yeah. Both things that we will continue to talk about regularly because they're going to be coming up constantly. So, but today's episode, we're going to talk about another hot button issue, election interference, and we're going to lump voter fraud into that because those two things kind of go hand in hand. I also want to touch on, some of the conversations that they're having about voter ID coming up for these coming up elections. So, I'm going to let you kind of launch this one off and kind of get an idea of where you want to start. But, is voter fraud a problem? Do you want to jump in? You mentioned when we talked yesterday about the Brennan Center study and do illegal votes actually swing elections?
No. Okay, we're done. We can go home.
Go home.
No, and like it is that categorically obvious. So
I
the
have one case. I have one case that I'll bring up in a minute that I dug into and found that where illegal votes actually did swing an election.
I'm interested to hear it. Because I'll counter with the Republicans in North Carolina.
Well, that's
So
actually what it was. It was
oh
a
yeah, yeah,
Republican in North Carolina,
that's right,
Mark
that's
Harris.
right. Yeah, yep. And sorry, that was not illegal people. That was not undocumented non-citizens voting, which
No,
is
no, no.
where I think
That was a what are they ballot
ballot
mail
stuffing. Yeah,
yeah, ballot stuffing, mail-in ballots that and there was a track record of it. Like there was a clear leader of somebody telling people to collect these ballots, swing the vote, and then send them in. And that was all. There was a paper trail of all of that, which is why that election ended up getting overturned. And Mark Harris, who had won that election, ultimately ended up conceding, like not running again. And what was it? Dan McCready, I think, ended up winning by a small margin. But just to note, he had swung that election his way and he won by 995 votes. So we're talking about and the entirety of the voting I think was incredibly small, like incredibly
yeah,
small turnout.
yeah. And I think like congratulations, Republicans. Like this hot button issue for you. I believe that's either the first election in 200 years or the only election ever to be overturned because of fraud, and it was Republicans doing it. So just the hypocrisy never ends. So, but yeah, the reason why I wasn't with you straight away was, I'll start with non-citizens voting because that's the thing, right? That's the red herring. That's the argument that Trump is making, that so many non-citizens vote that our elections can't be trusted. And he uses that to champion legislation and to, propose a whole bunch of awful shit. The thing is that it is simply not true. So the Brennan Center study was a long time ago. It was about 20 years ago. It's hard to do these studies because they're so longitudinal. They take so long. You have to go through so much stuff. They found that something like 0.00003% of votes were fraudulently cast in over the course of two presidential election cycles. But more recently, in 2025, a couple states did go into this, 2024 and 2025. So Iowa flagged from I think the 2020 election. They flagged 2,700 votes that seemed suspicious, that were suspected of being cast by non-citizens. That number in that election was 0.01% of the votes cast. When they dug into that, they found something like 270 that withstood the initial scrutiny, that weren't just a clerical error, where a record hadn't been changed or something like that. Now you're down to 0.0001% of the votes cast in that election. Of that, they have referred 16 votes to prosecutors. Okay, and those votes, so they found, let's assume that those people are guilty. So they found 16 instances in a presidential election of non-citizens voting that are credible enough to warrant prosecution. It's not even a fraction of a percent. It's not even a rounding error. It's nothing. Michigan took a look at 7.9 million driver's license records and compared them to 7.2 million votes cast. And they found something like 24 cases that could ultimately be referred for prosecution. These numbers are minuscule. They're minuscule. And yeah, they should be referred for prosecution. If you're not eligible to vote, you shouldn't vote, right? But
Yeah.
does the existence of 0.0001% fraudulent votes mean that we have a voter fraud problem in this country? Absolutely not. And that has been borne out in study after study. Arizona, they went through all the 2020 elections. They hired a private cybersecurity firm who fucking took all the ballots and all the computers out of state to like Montana. They were paid by the Arizona Republican Party. They did whatever it is they did in Montana with those machines for 2 months and came back and were like, no fraud. And if I remember correctly, I think they might have said Biden was actually undercounted by like 300 votes.
Of
So
course.
no, voter fraud in this country, this is not a problem.
Yeah, I tend to agree completely. And my so the solution that they're proposing right now to the voter fraud that they're claiming has been happening to ruin American elections, which, I'm going to continue to harp on this as well, because again, uh, weakening and putting fear and making people question the election process is also, again, part of the, how to take a democracy to a dictatorship handbook from Viktor Orban. So this isn't surprising that this is that trying to get people to question the election process is a critical part of how dictators stay in power. But furthermore, like there's some steps that we can take to make people feel good. Because look, I'm all about this in general, and so one, and me and you, I know may differ on this. I am actually for voter ID. I've always had to, every time I've been to a polling place, and I can't remember exactly when I was in California if they required an ID, but I've been in Texas for almost 15 years now, and I've always had to bring my ID to vote. So I've never really questioned that. And I understand that there is a lot of information out there about how difficult it is to get an ID sometimes, and that how unrepresented the Black and Brown communities are when it comes to IDs. But if I'm being honest, like an ID serves multiple purposes, and if that's the thing that for me that we meet in the middle on, I'm okay with it. Like if your life is in a place where you are struggling so much that you can't get your own ID, then in all likelihood you might be the kind of person that's not going to be out there getting a voting anyway. To me it just seems like voting at that point seems like something that would just be on the back burner of your brain anyway. So what are your thoughts on that?
I want to thank you. I'm going to thank you for reigniting a fire that I said yesterday when we were talking. I had felt burn out a little bit because no on all of it. I object. So, something like 30 million people in this country don't have a driver's license or a passport or easy access to their birth certificate. Not having a picture ID is not a sign that you're at a certain stage in life beyond. Maybe you're a college freshman and don't have an in-state driver's license, or maybe you're 25 and you've lived in New York City your entire life and have never needed a car. But you might actually be quite politically active in either of those cases. I understand the argument for voter ID. I really do. It's simple, it's easy, It makes logical sense right off of the bat. I grew up in New York. I spent the first 40 years of my life in New York. I voted in a dozen elections without ID. I did not need ID. I needed ID when I came to Texas. And I don't find it materially, it doesn't uh, hamper my ability to vote because I need an ID. But that's because I have an ID. That's because I don't live in a rural county where the local, DPS office is 3 hours away. Or I don't have a job where it would require me to miss a day's pay to go get my ID. And the other thing about this, and this is probably at the core of why I think voter ID is odious, and I'm trying to decide how mad I get here. Voting is a constitutional right. Okay, voting is a constitutional right, like gun ownership, like speaking or protesting or becoming a member of the media. There is no other constitutional right that I know of that requires a photo ID to do it. The argument, the movement around voting, around any constitutional right, and I am not a gun guy. We've gone over this, right? But I will be consistent here. The movement should be to expand the right so that it is available to everybody in a manner that also enhances security. So we don't
Yeah.
have a voter fraud problem in this country. I just went over the statistics with you. People are not voting illegally. If you cast one vote illegally, you didn't change an election, and you're going to jail for 5 years here in Texas. Okay,
Mhm.
people aren't doing it. Voter ID serves nothing but to suppress the number of people eligible to vote. That's it, and that's why the Republicans want to do it. It's
Yeah.
why they say things like college ID is not enough, right? That is 100%, and they just happen to find this thing where it makes logical sense to a fuck ton of people that, yeah, sure, I need to show an ID. What's the big deal? I have ID. So does 92% of the voting age population in this country. But 30 million people who are not allowed to vote, who are not allowed to exercise their constitutional right to vote, is a lot of people.
I
Uh,
agree.
and and that's where, that's kind of where I am on voter ID.
Dude, and look, I still think I'm pro having an ID, but I'm also pro, like, look, let's make sure that IDs are accessible. Like, look, if this is going to be something that we're going to require, and this is going to be something, because look, the last thing we need in the country is uncertainty around voting. Like, and like I said, this is the but an issue that they're going to take and run with. And so I'm like, okay, then let's make getting an ID an accessible process. Let's make sure that, like, and it doesn't have to be a driver's license. And I don't know in Texas and in New York, because I have a driver's license, if they did it. But growing up, I had a couple of friends that didn't want to get their licenses when they turned 18, and so Utah had you could just go get a state issued ID. So you didn't have to have a driver's license. You can just get an ID issued, a photo ID from the state to with your birthday and information on it. So and I don't know necessarily what the exact solution that I would come up with here, but I'm definitely, look, if this encourages people to get out and do it, and it increases transparency, it increases how people feel about our elections processes, I'm all for it, because in general, what we want to get to is a place where policy is the thing that wins. Like that we're going back and forth on different policies and finding middle grounds and solutions. And so if this is something that people are genuinely concerned about, cool. Let's find a way to make it happen, but let's make sure that anybody that doesn't currently have an ID, that is a US citizen, has the ability to obtain an ID relatively easily and can do it prior to the election if they're going to try to institute it anytime soon. But the stuff that they're putting forward in the act that's going before the House now, that's complete horseshit. Because that, from my understanding, look, if you're going to require a birth certificate or a passport to vote, I'm firmly against that. Like,
Yeah, I
absolutely
mean
not.
the the thing about it is, and we'll get to the act in a second, is that's the argument, right? Oh, if we want to have trust in elections, and if voter ID restores trust in elections, then that's a net good. And yes, we should make it easily accessible to everybody. And I think every state has a photo, not a non-driver's photo ID available. I'm absolutely certain Texas does. 35 states require voter ID. The vast, vast, vast majority of the voting population has to show ID when they vote. How's
Yeah.
our trust in elections, right?
I
Like,
mean,
what is the problem that we're solving with voter ID if the majority of people already need to show it, the vast majority of people already need to show it, and we have no trust in elections? What is the problem that we're trying to solve? Why do we believe that requiring everybody to have voter ID is somehow going to increase our trust in elections when you have the leaders saying, well, no, it's now illegals voting. They have, you can be undocumented and get a driver's license,
yeah.
right? So now you have a photo ID. Yeah, now you have a photo ID, but you're not eligible to vote, but you have the ID, right? So it's important to me in an argument like this that what is what is being actually discussed is actually discussed. And what is being actually discussed is a way to limit the number of people who vote, especially when you look at who is affected by this. It's young people, it's college students, it's minorities. That is the vast majority of people, and those people tend to vote Democratic.
Yeah.
It is that simple. So I get it. Voter ID one day will probably be in every state. I'm going to lose this one, uh, but it's wrong. The argument is wrong. That the foundational basis for why we need it is wrong. It just doesn't withstand it, because if that were a problem, we would know.
Yeah. I, I get your point. I think I'm still
I'm
on the
not trying to
side
convince.
where,
Yeah, no, and
yeah,
my point here is not to convince you, but to illustrate the that we always focus on why is this being put in front of us, and we can focus on that,
yeah,
and you can come to a position where you're like, you know what, it still seems like a small enough imposition if things are done around it that I'm okay with it, and I can be on the side of like, no, any imposition is bad.
yeah.
That, and we can still coexist. uh
Yeah, well, I'm willing to concede that, but I still think that there's some other things that need to happen in this too. Like, meaning, like, we've now the seeds of the voting machines not being accurate, and there's a number of things that I think need to be put in place if we go down this path as well. Bipartisan viewership of all voting machines, like making sure that there is transparency in the room, so both parties are represented when votes are counted. If there's any question, there's an easy
they
way to
they
recall votes and
They
pull all that.
literally live streamed the counting of votes in the
Yeah.
2020 and 24
eh,
election.
Yeah, exactly. So, like, as long as we're look, taking steps to make sure that, to all of the people that this matters to, that we're including them in that conversation, that's what I care about, because I'm all for transparency, and I'm all for making sure that, look, if I'm in the minority of how I feel, and my the person I voted for lost, dude, I can accept that if the rest of the country is genuinely, for different policies. Like, I might not be happy about it, but I can accept it. And so, but there has to be that trust in the system. And so I guess right now I'm in this moment in time, there is so much distrust in the system as we're watching, things unfold in real time, with, US citizens being killed, and realizing that, our country might actually be being ran by pedophiles and child rapists. Like, that part of all of this is just, there's so much erosion at the core of the American system right now, that coming out of this, yeah, I think that there's going to need to be some changes to build trust back into the system in a way that everybody can get behind and be like, yeah, this is meaningful.
No, 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 and here's why, right? Like, play it out for a second.
Mhm.
Right now, we're at a time where there's a lot of distrust in our election. I happen to trust that the results of basically every election are accurate. Okay.
Yeah.
2020, there were 62 lawsuits filed by Donald Trump after the 2020 election. 61 of them were bounced out of court at the earliest possible moment. One made it to the next round, to the next analysis on a procedural basis, and was bounced then. Those are in front of Trump judges, Obama judges, Reagan judges, Bush judges, judges of every stripe. It got nowhere. We're 6 years after that election. There's been no whistleblower. There's been no video evidence. There's been nothing. The only thing that there's ever been is the Georgia Secretary of State going on the news every year and being like, there was no fucking fraud. The election was fair. Here's every claim that was made. I'm going to debunk every claim that was made. And he's a Republican, right? So Trump's own election chair in 2020 said this was an incredibly fair, safe, and secure election. Okay. There is no election security problem. The only reason we feel there is because Donald Trump keeps screaming that there is. But what's the next step? The next step is limit rights, is make it harder to vote, right? And for that reason, no, I can't get on the part of the argument that says we need to restore trust in the election by making a change to the electoral process, because the electoral process works. It's safe and secure. Okay. And every single change that will be proposed will only make it more difficult to vote, will only erode our ability to exercise our only voice in the democratic process. The
Yeah.
SAVE Act is the first and most obvious example of it. And they've walked back some of the most ridiculous shit, but they are saying, the key, one of the key components to this is that you have to prove citizenship when you register to vote. You have to prove United States citizenship when you register to vote. Okay. And that each state has to provide their voter rolls to the Department of Homeland Security. The second one should be odious enough and awful enough to everybody that's just like, no, fuck that. I don't want my voter shit going to the DHS. That one's easy. The second one is a way to nationalize elections. States run elections. It's Article 1, Section 4. States are wholly responsible for the manner and place and time of elections. Period. There is no federal role for that. If Texas wants to demand that you prove your citizenship, Texas can demand it. The federal government cannot. That is a way to start nationalizing elections. And that's what they want. And the way they're going to get that is by screaming, we can't trust our elections. The only reason we can't trust our elections is because you tell us we can't trust our elections. Before Donald Trump said in 2015 or 2016 that he might not accept the results of an election, this was unheard of in this country.
Yeah.
Unheard of, right? The only reason that this is at all a thing is because Donald Trump keeps saying it, because he knows that if you say something a zillion times, people are going to wind up just being worn down like water on a rock. And they're going to start to be like, all right, fine. I'll give you voter ID.
Yeah.
Fine. I'll give you one drive-up polling place in a county of 4 million people, Harris County, Texas. I'll
Yeah.
give you my voter rolls. So it's all a canary in the coal mine.
I hear that. I would just say that if we do concede on something like this and make it happen, then two things are critical. A, there is a clear path to getting IDs for everybody in situations where they may be difficult to obtain, and B, that there's the day that we vote, it becomes a national holiday, becomes everybody's off work, everybody gets paid, and so that there is. So if I'm a Democrat and I'm going to concede on any of this stuff, then I am making sure that we are getting, because like that's the flip side of it, though, right? Like, you think about the people that don't vote because they are, they can't they're dropping kids off early morning before school. They can't make it to the polls late afterwards. There are, making it a national holiday. I'm all for it. Like, and maybe that's the give, is that maybe we get more turnout because people actually have the day off and can show up than we do by requiring an ID. And I don't know what the statistics would look like on that, but I'm all for it. But I agree with your, look, the 2020 election, if it proved one thing, it's that you're correct, that voting is actually safe. And we talked about this before. We laughed, after Trump sent the FBI in to raid the Fulton election office, ironically enough, if news comes out of that office that, yeah, they found nothing and everything's fine, that will actually be the headline. The headline will be that they
Yeah,
actually
that's the
didn't find
story.
it. Yeah, the story is that they didn't find anything, rather than they just make the breaking news of like the FBI found voter fraud. But I'll be honest, at this point, with what's going on with the Epstein files, the FBI has zero credibility. None.
Yeah,
Zero.
the whole
And
administration has no credibility.
no, the
It's
fact that, dude, Thomas Massey going in and saying, we had 2 hours to look at these files, and 75% of the files are still redacted because the FBI went through and redacted all of these files prior to sending them to the DOJ. I'm like, man, yeah. It's all they are covering everything up for rich and powerful people. So yeah, like if anything comes out of this Fulton stuff, I think everybody's braced. And I've seen multiple videos of people have shot that's like, yeah, like we're just waiting for them to come out and say they found something, which is complete horseshit. But ironically, if they come out and say we found nothing,
yeah, yeah.
that'll probably be breaking news more than anything else. So
I do agree with you, by the way, about Election Day being a national holiday. 100%. It should absolutely be a national holiday. It's what we bragged about for 250 years. And yet, we don't celebrate it in the manner that we celebrate, Labor Day.
if we're requiring things to be done a specific way, okay, like give people time, give people the resources, and give people the ability to do it if they're planning on participating in our democracy. And yeah, like as long as the rules are the same for everybody, in my head, I'm like, I can get behind that. But the so the next thing I wanted to kind of jump into is, okay, so we're dealing with the midterms coming up in 2026. What are your thoughts on what's going to happen in the midterms, and what do you foresee potentially being roadblocks or something that could, fuck all of this up?
The thing that what they will try to do is create as many little places for people's votes to not count that they possibly can, right? So if they go through, Texas voter rolls, I think there's 18 million or something registered voters in Texas, and let's say they find 180,000, okay, 1% of registered voters where they're going to, where they feel those registrations are fraudulent. Let's say that they're not just like people who died and haven't been taken off, like 180,000 actual people, actual voters. Well, they're not going to tell you that you were taken off of, that your registration is inactive. And then they're going to make it harder to register, which they've already done. And then they're going to make it so that a mail in ballot has to be received, not postmarked by election day. They're just going to throw as many as many ways to discount your vote into the mix that as they possibly can. I think the that seems to be what they're going for. It's very, very hard for them to, just say we're not going to count this accurately, or that it's too localized for that, or we're not going to
Yeah.
swear in the new senators, the new Congress people, because the old Congress is already out of session, right? That's not how it works. So I think they're just going to try to find as many procedural roadblocks and throw them up along the way and change how people vote. Like Utah has been basically 100% mail-in voting for decades. I think it's 97% of people in Utah vote by mail. They're trying to end vote by mail in Utah. It's like, wait a second, there's no fucking voter fraud in Utah. Nobody, because it's a red state, so of course nobody's going to claim voter fraud there.
The
The
reddest of
system,
red states. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure they're red across the board, right?
yeah,
Does a
Democrat
Democrat
has
even
an
has a House seat there? Like,
do,
I'd be
do any live there? Like,
yeah,
are you
dude, I was
are you allowed to?
that,
Are you still allowed to wear blue if you're not at a BYU game or something?
that's about
Uh,
it.
Even the Utah University wears red. Uh,
Yeah,
no, so why are they changing that? Right? It's worked.
yeah,
It's worked forever. They're changing that because it makes it harder.
yeah,
So and it makes it more confusing. And that stuff like that mail date, that move to make it so that the your for your ballot to be counted if you mail it in, it has to be received by election day, not postmarked by election day. That's a pretty big deal.
yeah.
Uh, and I think we need to be aware of all these things.
I agree. I think that you can still like, okay, so for example, like with early voting, as long as the date that there should not be a required received date because the mail can get fucked up, right? If anything, if they want to push the postmark date to an earlier date prior to the election so that they have all of the ballots or most of them by election day, I'm cool with that. Like I wouldn't push back on that as long as, like, so, if voting is November 4th, you have to have your mail-in ballot has to be postmarked by November 1st. Cool. Like that
I
that
think there are
doesn't
states that do that already.
yeah,
I'm
like
not sure, but I think some states do that.
yeah, if that were me, I'm like, I'm not going to fight that. But one thing I did want to get into a little bit before we wrap up on here is election interference. And so kind of like my risks, the question about the risk of 2026, like we go back to 2016 and we talk about the Russian interference in the election and, special interest groups and, even our previous conversations about Citizen United and how these mega PACs have been able to raise so much money to impact these elections. So, what's your take on election interference, and what are the biggest threats to these upcoming elections in your view?
I mean, I think the biggest threat is our current administration, and their just willingness to do absolutely anything to stay in power. And the only way to stop that is to be ahead of it,
Well,
right?
they
Like,
have to. They have to stay empowered to not all go to jail because I'm pretty
right.
confident that, half of the his staff is actually in the Epstein files. So like,
I know
and
there's
and I think that
30
was
other things they'll
intentional.
go to jail for. Yeah,
Yeah, and
there's also 30 other things they'll go to jail for.
yeah,
Uh,
crypt as soon as we get they need to find a way to track the crypto stuff too.
yeah.
But
So I think that's going to be the biggest source. The thing about the Russia hoax thing is, like, in 2018, the Republican controlled Senate came out with a report that said, yeah, no, Russia was absolutely interfering with the 2016 election on behalf of Donald Trump. Yeah, and it was just completely buried because, Russia, kind of not a hoax,
yeah,
kind of a real thing. So, but I don't think that swung the election. I don't think that the foreign interference and the social media stuff, I honestly don't think that swings elections. I think what
yeah,
swings elections is getting votes to not count and getting people to not come out to vote and getting people to be unable to register to vote, eliminating same day voter registration and all the postmark stuff. So that is ultimately to me the biggest threat of election interference. That these folks will do absolutely anything to have an election that they can point to as fraudulent. That's all they want.
yeah,
All they want is doubt. They don't need to win. They need to sow doubt. And they're going to do whatever they can to do that.
yeah. I spent a bunch of time thinking about this today about election interference because my initial gut reaction when I started thinking about this was, man, there is so much money put into getting people to think about candidates a certain way. And, as I'm processing all of this, I'm like, man, but 2020 happened, right? Things got bad enough with Trump's first term and, the vote, I don't actually think Biden won that election in the sense that people went out in droves because they love Biden. They voted against Trump. They voted
Mhm.
against what was happening in the 4 years that Trump was elected because it was exhausting. We were all feeling exactly how we're feeling now, where we're just tired and over it. Like, we just want a day where the news cycle isn't taking our attention so we can focus on our families and our work and the other things that we enjoy doing in life rather than, like, is do we actually have a pedophile running our country or not?
And they voted against COVID.
Yeah, and voted against what was going on. There was so much going on. And I think in local elections, kind of like what happened with in the New Jersey election that you talked about at the top of the episode, like there is times that election interference and ads and things like that are effective to push certain candidates through, especially in tight races. But for the most part, uh I think if anything good comes from what's happening now is just that we've been lied to so much, that I think people are genuinely will question everything. And the interesting thing about it is, like, when somebody is just honest and transparent, and when they talk, they feel genuine. I think that that's going to start to connect and resonate with people more, and it makes it really hard to defame somebody. Like, I think about, like, both the candidates running for the Senate here, Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett. Whenever I hear both of them talk, like, there's a sense of, like, man, this person knows who they are, they're confident, and I trust them. And, like, we need that back in the political system. And my hope is that, as much as people want to crap on other people, there is enough information out there. And to be honest too, like, if we just disconnect from the platforms that allow us to be swung certain ways, like, cable news is going to be gone in 10 years, in my opinion. And there's going to be, when the boomers start to, like, really die off, we're going to see a shift in media. And, and if the one thing that algorithms hold true on is that, these companies get paid off our attention. So the things that we're going to give our attention to will get more plays. And, so my algorithms all show, stuff that probably somebody that's a Trumper or in MAGA doesn't see ever, and vice versa. And so I do think that the ability to interfere in that sense is going to be much more challenging, because to invade somebody's algorithm to, like, a T, I think that becomes an uphill battle in most situations, at
Yeah, I
least at
think.
mass volumes. You know what I mean? We can call bullshit on just about everything.
Yeah, I think I don't. I when I think of election interference, and I should probably switch this because you make a good point. Uh, I don't think of like PAC spending and ad spending. Uh, Although I do think that that shit should be illegal and reined in, and I think we should
Oh,
have
dude, are
like
you
a.
kidding me? I 1000% that believe that Elon Musk is caught doing election interference. I don't think he should. Why should he be allowed to invest the amount of money that he is in a Wisconsin judge? You know, things like that, where I'm just like, yeah, you have that stuff needs to be honed in, incredible. Like, it,
Yeah,
Citizens
I mean, I
United
think we
needs
should
to be
have
overturned.
I think we should have federally funded elections where the money
Agreed.
just comes from the government. And I think that we should have like a 6 week election cycle for local elections and maybe a 12-week election cycle for presidential and federal elections. The system that we have is such that the reason that I think of it a little differently, and I'm not a fan of the amount of money people can spend on, we talked about this for an episode with free speech, right? I think the system is broken, but it's broken in a way that allows Democrats to spend a fuck ton of money on stuff too, right? So it's not the type of interference that I understand when we're talking about interference if both parties can do it. The type of election interference that I think about when I think about this is one actor taking advantage of a unique position in order to interfere with the integrity or the outcome or the administration of an election. If both parties can run ads, we have this ad that I'm seeing all over the place every night when I watch the Olympics now, which is quite clearly not paid for by Tallarico. it is also not. It's an anti-Jasmine Crockett ad saying that she's only in there because Republicans want her in there. So it's tying Crockett to Republicans in an
Mm,
effort, obviously, to get Tallarico elected, right? So it's like I hate that shit. Right?
yep.
Is that, that's, yeah, that is something of some form of interference, but we can do the same shit with Paxton and the complete nut job who's running against him. Well, I can't even remember his name, but Mays Middleton, MAGA Mays Middleton, right? We can do the same shit to him and Chip Roy, right? And
Yeah.
we can interfere with their shit also.
Yeah.
It's more when the levers of power are being pulled by those in power for their own partisan gain, uh, where I'm like, that's election interference. We need to stop that.
It's a fair point. The election interference that I'm calling interference isn't technically illegal, but it should be.
Yeah, no, it's bad.
it's
It's all bad.
it's and I think I say that because like there is a in general, I would say that there is a section of like the Epstein grouping of people that have such an unadulterated amount of money to spend that the rest of Americans don't. I think it would be hard to compete with, and so I think that's why I tend to say, and I'm not saying that there's not a lot of left wing billionaires that help fund campaigns. I know it happens. I'm just saying that I think percentage wise, the amount of billionaires that funnel money into politics on the right is probably significantly higher. So I know both sides play the game, but I think
Yeah, no, it's way more on the
it's
Republican side.
yeah. I mean
Big money leans Republican always.
hence the reason the yeah Citizens United, and that's why people billionaires vote right, because they get tax breaks for it. So
Yeah,
it's not above the rest of us to connect those dots. So which in general, in my opinion, Citizens United should be overturned. And I think super PACs buying TV spots, in my opinion, I think it is election interference and it should all be cut out. I think it's
not just
terrible.
overturned. It should be undone by active legislation. Congress should actually say that.
Yeah.
Congress should take that ruling and pass a law.
Yeah. Fair point. So, well, who are we telling to shut the fuck up today?
So shut the fuck up today. Back to the caveat because I'm not as fired up about the future this week.
Well, look,
Uh,
you don't have to give the caveat anymore. I mean, you can tell
oh sweet, I can just tell
the
people to shut the fuck up.
yeah, you can just look at some point if we get a massive influx of followers, we'll
I'll go
explain it a little
back.
bit more too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is kind of an obscure one, but something that bothers me every time I hear it. People, and they're all progressive lefties who say things like unalived instead of killed. Okay, when was Epstein unalived? Right, or we believe Epstein was unalived and not killed. The reason that these people should shut the fuck up is because while they're shutting the fuck up, they should actually read 1984 by George Orwell, where the fucking job of half of the people that the Winston character works with is to go through the dictionary and eliminate words by taking other words and putting a prefix like un in front of it. Like, you are not happy or sad. You are, happy or unhappy. You are not alive or dead. You are alive or unalive. You weren't killed. You were unalived, right? The whole thing there is a movement. The whole thing in 1984 is this movement to reduce the number of words that we use because they feel like then you have less nuance and less way to express yourself. And if there's a way to take one word, put a negative prefix in front of it and eliminate three other words, now it's just efficiency, right? You're not saying dead, and you're not saying killed, and you're not saying committed suicide. You're saying unalived, right? You've now eliminated all these words from the dictionary. And, you know, I hear it from people with podcasts that have millions of listeners. And it's just like, dude, in the next breath, you'll be talking about how this is 1984 and fascism, but you're doing it also. So Just like words have meanings. You know, I'm a lawyer by training. My family, it drives them crazy because I say this all the time. Words have meanings. It's the beauty of language. Okay, it really is. It's what allows us to talk and be eloquent and be understood, and what allows us to ask questions and to really dig into the meaning, into the nuance of something. It's the beauty of a democracy that we use our words to convey points both broad and narrow, right? Both blunt and fine. And when we take that away, then what did I just say? Right? We're saying we're using words both broad and unbroad, both blunt and unblunt, and it's fucking awful and it's stupid and it's 1984. And if you're a goddamn progressive lefty Democrat who's screaming that Donald Trump is bringing in 1984 and putting on the party commanded us to believe what they said and not what we saw with our own eyes on every Instagram post when Alex Preddy gets shot, stop saying that Alex Preddy got unalived, because it's the same fucking book. So shut the fuck up and read the book. That's why I shut the fuck up.
Shut the fuck up. Fist bump it.
There you go.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, I didn't realize that. I guess I always just assumed that people were doing that because of, like, Instagram algorithms or something, so they didn't get censored. But yeah, if they're doing it on podcasts,
I think they just don't want the negative connotation of saying killed, like there's a violent, imagery that comes along with killed, right? Or committed suicide, like maybe that blames the person in some way. So it wasn't. It's just this like.
No, I agree.
It's like microaggressions. It comes from the same place as microaggressions. Like, no. If someone got killed, they got killed. If that word offends you, don't kill anyone and fight against murder, I guess. I don't know, but that's the word.
I'm with you on that. Well, what are we talking about next week, Elwyn?
I have no idea. It's hard to go from week to week. What do we got on the list? I don't want to do gerrymandering yet.
No, yeah, I was gonna say. I was thinking maybe we could talk military.
In what sense?
I have been pondering this topic, and maybe this is gonna get shut down and cut off the end of this episode. But should the U.S. require young men to join the military for a year or two? And
mandatory service.
Coming out of high school.
I like it. I like the idea.
And maybe a bunch of stuff surrounding that. So let's toy on that. We'll see. Yeah. So if you're listening to the end of this episode, the little cliffhanger here. We might talk about this, or it could be something completely different, especially considering the news cycle is probably going to feed us 1,000 different things between now and then that we could talk about. So
we might be under military martial law. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, the only jobs left to have in the country might be working for ICE. So we might be that might be it.
They pay really well, and apparently you can fly to the Olympics if you're in ICE. Like shit, who knew?
All right, well, see y'all next week.
All right, later.